morning, dear colleagues and guests of the conference. Welcome to the fourth day of the Product Management and Business Analysis Conference, Z-Days. We are happy to welcome you here. My name is Alexandra, and I'm going to help our speaker and expert today to facilitate today's session. Let me introduce our expert. It is Victor Schlegel, Director of Enterprise Analytics Consulting at EPAM Switzerland, and his presentation, Data-Driven Product Design and Hyper-Personalization. Before we start, I'd like to know that this session is being recorded and the recording will be available later on our YouTube channel. You'll get all the links available to it. And also, all the event participants are muted by default, but we encourage you to post your questions in Q&A chat on the right screen. And please vote for the questions you like most of all, because at the end of the session, we'll dedicate time to answer the most voted questions. All the rest questions will be answered later after the conference in our discussion chat. And we'd like to ask you to post your questions with your names visible, as there is a competition on the conference for the best questions and most active attendees. So we are ready to start. Victor, welcome. Good luck.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone to my session. At the beginning, I would like to give you a short background on the topic and how it came to the idea. So basically, approximately 7 years ago, I was working at Swisscom strategy department. Swisscom is the largest telecom enterprise in Switzerland, and I was responsible for the strategy definition of the enterprise for big data and analytics. And in those times, we have executed the services where we have provided mobility insights in real time for the whole country based on anonymized telecom data. So you can imagine basically that every active telephone can be positioned by the telecom enterprise, and we have aggregated this data, anonymized, and provided the information, so mobility flows through the country in real time to cities. For example, you see here on the background, this is the city of Geneva with the corresponding flows of people going at a specific time from one area of the city to another one. And with that information, cities were able to better design and plan the parts of the cities, better plan the green areas or recreational areas, so that every citizen would be able to reach it within 10 minutes. We have provided these informations to the transportation companies to improve the network, as well as the tourism destination offices to help them optimize the cooperation network and giving them the understanding, which nations move how through Switzerland. And basically, during the setup and operations of those services, we came across a lot of challenges in regards to the data privacy, as you can imagine, as well as the managing this relationship between the business customers, where we have provided the services, as well as the end customers that, from whom we have derived the data. So this is on the background, explaining why basically inefficiencies in the customer relations, use of sensitive data and artificial intelligence solutions. It's also kind of an attempt to make this world a little bit better because of the troubles we have encountered in the global sense. It's about a strategic approach. I don't have ready-to-go services. It's an attempt to set up an open source community, also a pilot with public sector, cities and pharma in order to test this strategic approach. And that strategic approach would be relevant for experts working with sensitive data, privacy, data strategies, product service designers, smart city, blockchain experts, policymakers, as well as the marketing experts and open source participants. You can apply that strategic approach to support your daily thinking, whether you're working on product design or strategy, basically for the data or privacy. So let's discuss maybe with the basic challenges you would see on the market nowadays. So on the left side, you have commercial enterprises. On the right side, you have the customers. And you can imagine there's almost at any company a basic need to understand the customer behavior in order to create personalized services. So the companies naturally, for hundreds of years, invested into the technologies in order to collect data and understand the customer behavior. And the basic force was, of course, to position the products and services on the markets for the consumption. And on the other hand, you have then the customers that, impose some kind of control by themselves, not providing the data, as well as the regulatory bodies that force the commercial enterprises to fulfill some laws in the country and not just, walk in and collect all our private data. You can imagine basically that it becoming more difficult for the enterprises to run this model because through the competition, the enterprises are forced nowadays, and also due to availability of the technologies, the companies are forced and are able to collect very private data out of our mobile phones, computers, etc. And there's kind of a clash between the needs to understand our behavior versus protection of our privacy and data. So imagine now that instead of forcing the commercial, or instead of going and investing additional investments into the technologies in order to collect further data that would be relevant to create these services, we would create a cooperation between the end customers and the commercial enterprises exactly at that edge where the data exchange would happen. And maybe help the enterprises avoid additional investments, at the same time protecting our privacy and data. How that construction could look like. Let's basically discuss the basic setup. So imagine that this cooperation would happen in form of a cooperative. A cooperative is a form of organization where the ownership belongs to the customers, and this cooperative would focus very strongly on the customer needs. And for the sake of the example, let's define that this cooperative would follow the purpose of increasing the quality of life of the customers. Concretely, let's go over the examples. You can imagine that not many people are the fans of carrying potatoes, food for dogs home regularly, and would like to automate that aspect, whereas basically finding the products, non-emotional products all the time in the flat. If you ask people, what bothers you every day, you get also very funny aspects, what routines I don't like to run every day. So when we were conveying some surveys, some people basically mentioned the cafe cooking in the morning is actually a painful process to some of the guys, and part of people have asked, is there a possibility for a cafe machine to start cooking when I get up from my bed and I don't want to press the button to start cooking the coffee. We were watching the market at that time, so it was 5 years ago. Digital assistants just came on the market, but there was no cafe machine that would understand my sleeping patterns when I come up out of my bed and start basically understand I need my coffee and start cooking. So watching the market last year, finally a company called Hamilton brought a cafe machine that integrated the Amazon digital assistant. And you can basically talk to the cafe machine and say, please cook. But if you try the coffee, I don't know if you will like it. So people said, I need a Euro cafe machine that would understand that. And those were basically the needs of having an additional quality of life in the mornings versus very private data exchange. So would you like to share my sleeping patterns with a producer of the cafe automates? We had the topics around mail channel digitalization. So people don't like to open the mailbox. Sorry, not the mailbox, but post box, because nowadays every mail you get in your mailbox does not mean any fun for you. You will find the police fine, some kind of an information from your city to fill out some forms. And the question is, is why don't we get this? All the technology available on the market. So why don't we get this post directly on our smartphones if we give our digital IT to the public services, for example? You can directly, instead of printing the mail on the printer, send us the letter on the mobile phone. We will save paper. You will, the organizations will save water. We will reduce traffic because the post cars don't have to stand on the streets and block the traffic. We will free up the space because we don't need then the post boxes anymore. The service will be cheaper and it will be much more convenient for everyone to get the mail on the smartphone if I'm on vacations and avoid any further troubles. Not replying on a specific mail. And then, you can imagine not many people are a fan of tax declarations. So why don't we automate it? If I will give my data in regards to the tax declaration, why don't we automate that aspect? And there were like many further topics placed. You can just ask yourself, what would bother you during your daily life, or what daily routines would you like to avoid? We have placed a link to the Menti. I would appreciate if you just press on that link or go over the menti.com and use the code 197436 and give us an idea, what would bother you. It's also a kind of mental exercise also for you, what bothers people around the world. If we avoid or not talk just around generic topics like I would like save time or like to earn more money, I would like to be become more beautiful, healthy, have more fun and more friends. Please don't give it. We have collected that these topics already, and those can be addressed. But please be more concrete. So imagine what disturbs you in your daily life, and be more concrete in order to better define the kind of service that you would like to get in your daily life. You can vote during the presentation, so we are not going to shut down the service till end of the presentation, and I will move forward. So basically, let's discuss maybe the basic setup of such a cooperative with the purpose of increasing the quality of life of people, where the customers would have the ownership of that organization and then able to define the access policies for the enterprises, how to access my personal data at any time. So you control the data flow towards the commercial enterprises, defining what data at what time for what purpose is flowing to the enterprises. You are giving your data into that cooperative, so you store your personal data and you know that you are owning that data. Nobody has access to that data set except you, except you have given the access to the enterprise to read the data set. And then you basically also define the needs of your quality of life. So you get kind of a map about the quality of life of people if that cooperative would exist throughout the city, and everybody would basically also kind of understand in what part of the city how the quality of life of people is being driven. And the whole execution, as well as the setup of this cooperative, would happen bottom up. So individual becomes the most important object in that organization. Then you have your neighborhood, you have quartier, city, region, and then the country is like the least important organization or object within this construction. So complete focus on the customer and the bottom-up execution of the definition of the strategy, as well as the bottom-up execution of the whole strategy, as well as the governance. So starting from the individual. And then let's take the example from the pharma. You can apply that approach to any sector. I just have chosen the pharma sector due to our recent exchanges in that sector. And you can imagine that any pharma enterprise would have the challenges of improving the patient's adherence. The pharma industry, in order to design very personalized medicine, would like to understand what disease we have exactly, collecting very sensitive personal data, like DNA sequences, in order to design the individual medicine to cure my cancer in a very targeted way. And you have the challenges of, or the questions around how do I deliver that personalized medicine very fast. A very relevant topic nowadays, if you look at COVID, we have detected this disease very late. We still don't have any reliable data available for the clinical trials. It was very slow to get that personalized data for the pharma industry in order to construct the medicine, and this medicine is still not personalized. So it's one medicine for everyone without looking at the side effects because of the urgency we have nowadays in regards to the virus. And then it's the question, how we're going to deliver or distribute that medicine very fast if we don't have direct customer relationship. So there are companies around working within the construct of a cooperative like Midata that basically provides very sensitive data under the control of the customers towards the pharma industry, but the whole setup of Midata is looking just the health data. And the question is, would that construction scale if we concentrated just on the healthcare, why not applying it towards other industries and sectors? So we have been consulting MCH Group. MCH Group is the owner of almost more than 50 trade fairs in globally, so in Switzerland and globally. You probably know the conference, the trade fairs around art, so Basel Art, where people come and are able to look at arts and buy and sell art. You know the trade fair in regards to the luxury watches called Basel World, and the question of the MCH Group at that time was, our business model is getting old. How could we renew ourselves? And you can imagine now, conference provider or the trade fair provider or the owner would come up with a new business model, basically helping as a matching organization between the customers and the commercial enterprises to place themselves. And instead of running the fair trades for the luxury watches, you would basically run the services around the data exchange and how the private data would help the market, the environment, cities, etc., to improve themselves instead of just using this data to force the customers to buy services. So you can imagine, the usage of private data can have several dimensions, and you would have a kind of a trade fair around that aspect. MCH Group was very much interested to go into that aspect, but they are looking now for partners and how to execute that kind of a strategy. So we are still piloting the approaches together with them, and I just wanted to give an example of two organizations that are acting in that field, but there are more going on, of course, around the private data. Google is very much active. You have blockchain communities around that aspects. You have topics around sorry, I forgot the name of the card. It doesn't matter. Let's talk about the basic relations within this cooperative. So imagine that the investments that company are doing into the marketing and artificial intelligence are partially going to go into that cooperative construction. Okay, and the customers would provide the data, the votes, and execute pre-orders, as well as pay fees to be, within this cooperative. Why would customers go into that construction? So there are surveys being done why people go on platforms, and basic drivers are the income. You have one of the drivers would be like increasing my status of becoming an expert, let's say, curating, taking care of, or like I'm the best expert of how to take care of the cats in my neighborhood, and increase my status in these regards. And then some of people would like to save the world. And then, of course, there's another aspect that people are being simply forced to go on the platform. I don't want to name the countries, but let's keep that aspect. But it's another form of why people would be forced to go on the cooperative or that kind of a platform. And what would be the USP then that you get, or what do you get out of these cooperative organizations? I would like to formulate it in form of the USPs. So on the commercial side, you will have of course, the reduced cost for the data search. All the private data I would need as an enterprise would be available within this construction. On the customer side, you will have the trust because I'm controlling my data flow at any time, as well as the whole cooperative belongs actually partially to me. So I'm also driving the governance. Therefore, there's trust. I give more data, and with better data, you have better possibilities of artificial intelligence and automation. Because the data is just simply better, and better data all the time, the market has shown, beats any artificial intelligence being placed. You have then on the customer side a higher transparency, who is using my data for what purpose, for how long. You have then improved quality of life because I get better services that basically target my needs much better. You have possibly improved your income and your status, as well as you are gaining so-called self-sovereign identities. Basically, I'm controlling my digital twin, my digital identity, because of the imposed control on my data flows. And then for the coming back basically to the commercial enterprises, you are running also a more sustainable business, because for some people, a better quality of life means, I don't want to be bothered by the advertisement, or I don't like companies providing services on the market that destroys the environment. You have then again at the least improved customer relations at the end because of that direct connections to the customers over that platform. And then talking about the USPs in a global sense, for the European market, if we got stuck between the technology and artificial intelligence services coming more and more historically from United States, and you basically we purchase cheap services from the Asia with the cheap workforce, additionally now being added with very advanced technologies in artificial intelligence. The Europe somehow got getting stuck in the middle, and then you can consider as one resort for the competition is basically providing cooperative approach that is heart of the Europe, and then translate it into your enterprise and define a competitive advantage out of the cooperative models or strategic approach on the market. I have tried to break down the whole construct into the platform business model canvas, and have structured the possible stakeholders within that framework. So you have on the top left the producers in form of the commercial enterprises. At the bottom left you have partners in form of public sectors, communities, digital IT service providers, live marketing companies, and open source solution providers. And on the right side, you have customers, individuals or members of the cooperative that are organized in form of this cooperative. And then the owners would be the governance bodies that are defined by the consumers, how to run the cooperative and how the organization of that cooperative would look like. And then we can go further with very advanced topics like decentralized autonomous organizations being executed on the blockchains, but I don't want to go deep into that. I use this platform business model canvas in order to explain the strategic approach as well as the flows of information, services, and benefits. Whereas I will use that canvas in order to explain the strategy, you will find the flows of the money, services, and benefits in the presentation I will upload later after today onto the LinkedIn. You will get the link to that. So please stay with me just on the topic of how a possible execution of this strategy might look like. So in ideal case, you will have a commercial enterprise that would understand the capabilities of such an construction and focus and invest in customer life quality in the first step. Then basically going to the second point and establish small use cases and let people learn and use this complex system. It's not an one directional construction. It's a network. We don't just produce, market and sell the data. It's about networking with the customers and consumers in order to understand their needs. So people need to also understand the advantages of controlling the data and what do they get out of that construct in regards to the higher quality of life and what is the meaning of it. You have also different interpretations on the market for the quality of life. And then in the third step, you would scale the system, for example, with public sector, maybe Fridays for Future, environmental movement. And then on the last step, you will basically, as soon as the structure is established on the market, ask for relevant data. So could I have your DNA sequence in order to improve my marketing, in order to design the private individual medicine and avoid side effects and improve customer relationship. It's an ideal approach. The world is not ideal, as we know. So you can imagine it, execution of that strategy you would encounter a lot of barriers and challenges. So another possibility is, of course, establishing a showcase with partners first. Then let people learn and use the system. Then enterprise realizes there's some benefit for us. We will be much more efficient going onto that construct in regards to the marketing and data collection, as well as the in regards to service design. We would better understand the trends and therefore design better products. So in third step, focusing and then investing into the customer life quality, and then going back, expanding the use cases at the step number 4, scale the system. And then at the end, basically ask for relevant data, improving marketing and customer relations. So what are the next steps? What we're trying to do? We're trying basically nowadays to contact the cities and to ask them whether they would be interested to get a map of quality of life for the city, in order to understand whether they imaginations about citizens' needs match with the imaginations of what citizens would like to have, with that construction, improve participation of the citizens in designing the public sector. I can give you an example. Nowadays, let's skip that example. I wanted to tell it at the beginning of the presentation, but so basically, trying to help cities to position on a platform to improve the public services, as well as the improving the participation of the citizens within the public services, and that platform also can be used by the enterprises to learn the new relationship towards the customers and position the services at the later stage. For example, Pharma going onto that pilot together with the cities and helping the cities to improve the public services and getting this kind of a map. And at the end, asking for example, DNA sequences in order then to start designing the personalized medicine. So we are trying to set up an open source community to drive the framework in form of a collaborative customer experience management to the next level. You can please register yourself in that community. The links are going to be provided. If you are interested to support that kind of a framework, we need analysts, psychologists, blockchain experts, user experience designers, software developers, etc. And then test that kind of an approach within a concrete framework called customer experience management. So think of that construct right now as a kind of a smart cooperative in order to modernize the way companies would manage customer experience as a one execution form of the approach or framework I have presented today. A short break. We have a puzzle game within the conference. So this is the slide in regards to that game. Please, guys, the ones that are participating in that gaming, here's the secret word. And I'm coming to the end of my session. Thank you for your attention, and we are coming to your questions.
Victor, thank you very much for such a detailed and complex topic of how major commercial enterprises use a personalized approach, taking in mind our quality of life. Could you share with us the results of the Mentimeter, please?
I think it's going to be now a difficult exercise.
Yeah,
housekeeping. Yeah.
Yeah, let's
wash my hair in the morning. Yeah, thank you very much. Getting up from my bed. Sorry, it's cooking. I just read, guys. I'm not gonna commute with colleagues and neighbors. Less cooking. Getting up from bed to collect water.
Victor, actually, we haven't got yet any questions in our chat, so we can stop a little bit more and read. It's really interesting because we've got a lot of results, and I see a lot of people have
daily
really
commuting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, the topics are similar. I can also maybe talk till the questions not come. Please, sorry for one-way communication. I all the time prefer discussion, but due to the conference setup, it's difficult to do right now. But let's take another example of daily commuting. What we are encouraging nowadays is a very tough time for the cities to manage the traffic. A lot of people own nowadays the cars, so everybody is going by car. It's very luxury topic, but we have basically limited capacities of the streets. We cannot extend it unlimitedly. So what we have nowadays is a typical picture in the morning is congestion. People get stuck, so I don't have, it's not fun anymore to sit in the car in the morning for 20 minutes to get to the work. And the question is, how could we manage that? What we tried, we have executed a theoretical game where we positioned a platform where customers would win some kind of a product or services or money directly if they would travel at a different time. So how to break the peaks in the city in a cooperative approach. And there has been conveyed studies that if you remove 10 to 15% of the cars in the mornings, we would avoid having congestions in the cities. But how would we be able to detect who would be able and also drive people away from driving at let's say at 8 o'clock? Yeah. So imagine you have a platform where British Petroleum says you would get gasoline for free for 1 year. I'm exaggerating at the moment. If you would drive at different times, so not at 8 o'clock, but 8:30, and you would gamify that. You would gamify that whole cooperation in regards to the traffic, saying that people would win some products if they would travel at a different time, and you will give a counter that out of 3,000 people that are traveling right now at 8 o'clock through the city in the cars, we would need 200 and then 150, 100, depending on the participation, where people say, I'm right now willing to travel at a different time. Please track my position through the day, and I would like to win the free gasoline for 1 year. The British Petroleum would start acting in kind of on very environmental aspects. Cities would avoid traffic congestions, and people would save the clean air and daytime traveling without waiting on the streets for 20 minutes to get to the work. Auto order of food that ends in fridge. Yes, please. You have, I'm gonna show that one. So on the left, you have a company called Starship. These are the founders of Skype, looking at the reduction of the delivery cost for last mile delivery, and you probably encountered a lot of such delivery robots. This robot can take 2 shopping bags and deliver them to the position of your mobile phone. But now imagine that this robot starts talking to the entry door, starts talking to the doors of the elevator, or to the elevator itself, basically being enabled to travel up to the floor you are living in, and then talking to the entry doors of your flat. Within this old technology available on the market to enable that kind of a service. So on that platform, companies would be able to understand how many people would be willing to having that service, so having the delivery towards your flat or fridge, and concentrate and design that service specifically for that quartier, because they know 1,000 people are willing to pay for that service, order that, and the producers of the elevators and doors would understand how they could improve the living, so the flat owners would improve their real estate, would be able, maybe, I don't know, have a different pricing on that, and the people would avoid basically carrying the potatoes, carrying non-emotional products to their homes, storing the very sensitive data, access code to my flat within cooperative that basically manage this sensitive data.
Yes, Victor, sorry to interrupt you, because we've got some questions, and one question, I will read it now, it's about this personal data. So because the whole topic and approach is based on collecting personal data. Where is this border between collecting the data to be used for positive, not harmful change, and collecting data to be used in any other purpose? A
Yes.
person who gives the data cannot even imagine.
Exactly. So the human nature can become very evil. So you can imagine that, we have to control also the customers in some aspects, as well as the drivers. So I assume the question was asked towards the expressing the needs that can be very negative, but as well as the usage, very negative usage of the data by enterprises. So the idea on one aspect, how to control the customers, it's I don't see at the moment any other way as establishing governance and ethic boards by customers themselves, as well as the higher transparency in regards to within the cooperative. So avoiding that customers would break the law. As an example, with giving the unallowed needs into the cooperative, and on the side of the enterprises, how basically avoid that the commercial enterprises would misuse the data. It's would be implemented through the transparency and avoidance of giving the data out of the cooperative. So data would never leave the cooperative. The company will not get it into their hands. Instead of that, the company is placing an analytical algorithms within the cooperative in a very transparent way, being controlled by the governance bodies of the cooperative. I hope I answered the question. So through the high transparency, we would avoid misuse of the data, and also increase the security of the whole construction. I mean, take an example of Linux software being programmed in an open source manner, where people can check any code, and through that cooperative approach, we have got nowadays the most secure software on the market compared to centralized ones being provided by Microsoft.
Thank you very much, Victor, for your answer. I have a question from myself. Right now, we are working from home. What do you think is going to be the trend in life automation? In other words, what do you think is going to be automated next, from your point of mind? Maybe what skills?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are again several aspects to that. So you can imagine that the families are being burdened with this home working from home. Parents have to take more care of children, or like there's a bigger crossover between the personal life and the my work. Providing then personalized services towards children and parents would be on one aspect. What would be the needs nowadays? Let's take an example: personalized education then in the evenings. So if you can imagine that the whole educational system came from 1900, it did not change much, and that at those times engineering and math was very important. We have a very strong focus in many countries still on these subjects, and but and the question is, is that really individual education? And you have also a different different needs. So you have a different development of children that cannot be, or it's serving the children with some standard educational approach would probably mean inefficiencies as well in regards to the education. So having very personal data about each child under the control of the parents, and then giving that information towards the educational bodies would allow them to provide some personalized education. So is it really necessary that some children have to wait till their 7th birthday then when they go to school? Or is it okay for some children to go with 5? And are they psychologically ready to work with some, an elderly child besides on the school bag? So that could be that could be an improvement in this regards, and basically providing a very personalized approach in regards to the education. And then already mentioned, shopping automation. If we are not allowed to go freely outside for shopping, do I really want to be served by just one restaurant or one shop which is 50 meters away from my home? If I was all the time or fan of a specific boutique within my city, they can still offer those services, providing automated shopping even in the evenings. And then you can break it further. What if we start cooking for each other? If I have a neighbor that is a genius cook in a 5-star restaurant and he's bored in the evenings because he's lonely, maybe, I don't know, having a psychological problem of not being able to talk to people, and he can now say, I have a trouble, I cannot talk to people, but and I feel lonely, how can I get help? Within this cooperative approach, you can basically open new communication channels where you can help people specifically without disclosing their personality. So if it's a famous cook, maybe he doesn't want to tell that he has a complex or troubles talking to people. Sorry to take this example, but and now psychologists would be able to help him, telling, guy, you need to talk to your neighbors. Maybe you can cook for your neighbors and they can talk to you, and basically having that very personal information being placed within the cooperative and do the matching of what can be exchanged would help the cook in regards to his psychology, and I will get the very personal cooking.
Victor, thank you very much for your answer. We've got one more question from Thomas, and he is asking, does the concept you presented support different business models, such as value-to-value data for a better service or value for money data for crypto?
Yes, exactly. So basically, I mentioned at the beginning, sorry, could you repeat the question one more time?
Yes, sure.
Just to have the...
Does the concept you presented support different business models, like value for value and value for money?
Exactly. So imagine that the value of information has, the information has a different value when you change the place and time. And imagine that instead of being paid with the currency, since we don't know what is the value of the cook being served, having the conversation by the cook who has the troubles with his psychologist to the neighbors, there's a corresponding value of that conversation that neighbors provide to the cook, and it's difficult to monetize it. So it's a little bit awkward for people to pay for 1 hour. So there's an exchange of the cooking services versus a conversation or time being provided to the cook. If we can start value that in form of the digital currency for psychology, or digital currency for the information or conversation being provided, then you have, you are opening a new kind of an exchange of the values. And in regards to the business models, that was the question. You can, we have discussed, I can maybe go back to my presentation and show that slide here. So you can run it as an open source community. We have discussed it as a kind of a public service. You can design that. You can design that cooperative in form of a card where companies would understand, what services do I buy, and provide me very personalized discounts. So it's a company card that I get, and would basically all the time scan the QR code, giving the idea or collecting some points. We have also designed the models for fair trade. So, having a matching functionality between the providers and the consumers in a very different construct. And then, of course, having the platform from the companies towards the consumers, where the data exchange would be, or service exchange would be enabled. So I'm not sure if I'm answering these questions, but what I tried to say is that, each of the companies I mentioned, or the construction, they have a different business model. So it could be an exchange of, you can basically run it as a matching functionality on the market between the needs for the information and the data provisioning. You can position it as a platform for service design. We have discussed the construction of voting. So you can imagine it as a voting platform where people are enabled to vote for specific services or topics, or give their idea. You can, ask yourself, if we nowadays work at the companies and get salary, where we are being also asked annually by annual employee survey, are we doing well as a company? Could you please evaluate us? And then transfer it to the public services, asking yourself, why do we pay the taxes nowadays? And nobody from the public services is coming to us, is asking, is it, are you doing well within the city or quartier or the country? Can we serve you better? Of course, we get police forces and healthcare. No, healthcare, we are paying it. So police forces and basically law enforcement in form of the state. But I think it's too little for the taxes we are, paying to the state, and having that kind of an intransparency. So
thank you very much for valuable discussion. We're running out of time, and really it was so complex topic you presented. Thank you very much. And I thank all our attendees for coming today and for joining us. Enjoy your day. Please vote for the discussion, and we can proceed with the question in our discussion chat and community that. Have a wonderful day. Thank you very much. Good luck to everyone.
Thank you very much. And please, we can continue the discussion on the forum or over the link I have provided on that slide. We will upload it, and it's a link to the LinkedIn you can register yourself within the community, ask questions, and
Yes, the
we will also
presentation will be provided later after the conversation. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a nice day.